Selamat siang semuanya. Terima kasih sudah hadir di acara webinar ini untuk adik-adik mahasiswa, kakak-kakak dosen, teman-teman lama, semuanya yang sudah hadir. Terima kasih. Pertama-tama barangkali kami perkenalkan dulu siapa kami, atau mungkin sudah kenal semua sebenarnya. Sebagian dari listnya kelihatan kita sudah teman lama. Jadi kami dari Lab Psikologi Ekonomi dan Konsumen. Oke, sebentar saya share screen dulu. Eh, yes. Kami dari Lab Psikologi Ekonomi dan Konsumen Fakultas Psikologi UI. Dan ini adalah eh, webinar kami yang kedua. Mungkin sebelumnya sudah ada yang pernah ikut webinar tentang pinjol. Pinjol, oke. Ya, semoga sudah kelihatan. Baik. Oke, siapa kami? Kami terdiri dari staf pengajar di Psikologi Fakultas Psikologi UI, juga ada mahasiswa-mahasiswa S1 dan S2 yang sedang magang, juga ada dosen pengajar tidak tetap, plus juga ada mantan-mantan alumni yang masih beraktivitas di lab kami. Terima kasih, yang kita sebut juga sebagai affiliate ya, atau associate researcher. Em, apa yang kami lakukan? Ini perkenalan sambil menunggu yang lain berdatangan ya. Em, Sebelumnya siapa kami? Jadi apa yang kami lakukan itu tujuannya, misi kami adalah meningkatkan kesejahteraan konsumen, ekonomi, consumer well-being, dengan tiga strategi. Strategi pertama adalah lewat riset, lalu lewat pengabdian masyarakat. Oh, sebelumnya untuk Tomek, mohon maaf saya pakai bahasa Indonesia dulu ya. So Tomek, sorry, I will first talking to introduce this our lab and this event with bahasa Indonesia. I hope you don't mind. And
That's
later,
okay.
yeah,
I
okay,
know
just a few
understand.
minutes, okay,
Mhm.
ya, dan bagaimana cara kami melakukan, bagaimana kami strategi kami untuk mencapai tujuan kami ini, itu sesuai dengan expertise masing-masing tim. Jadi mulai dari strategi kami ya, mulai dari studi atau riset atau pengmas di level perilaku konsumen keseharian, seperti lihat di gambar di atas tuh, perilaku orang lagi belanja. Ada juga yang belanjanya beda, belanja saham, itu juga tercover di bagian dari riset kami. Juga ada yang belanjanya online, yang di bawah ini. Dan juga belanja yang mungkin diperantarai oleh artificial intelligence. Ya, seperti ini, ini kurang lebih em, seperti ini ya strategi kami untuk mencapai tujuan tersebut lewat riset, lewat pengabdian masyarakat, dan lewat rekognisi. Berikut ini sedikit detail sedikit detail, harap semoga tidak membosankan. Ada tiga domain utama riset yang kami lakukan di lab ini. Yang pertama adalah perilaku ekonomi dan perilaku konsumen. Yang kedua psikologi media. Dan yang ketiga yang sorry. Masih terlihat ya. Sorry, layar saya masih terlihat.
Masih, Kak.
Oke, baik. Thank you, Mbak Agnes. Baik. Hmm, Untuk perilaku ekonomi dan oke, yang ketiga itu psikologi komputasi. Ini baru akan dikembangkan. Oke, untuk psikologi ekonomi dan konsumen saat ini dan yang sedang akan kami lakukan itu tiga topik utama. Lalu yang sudah dan sedang berjalan. Yang pertama adalah systematic evidence base, di mana kita mencoba mengumpulkan studi-studi yang sudah ada, tesis disertasi maupun publikasi, lalu kita coba bangun what works, apa lesson learn-nya dari sini, dan nanti akan kita coba buat dalam bentuk sebuah dokumentasi atau buku mungkin nanti. Terus yang kedua topiknya itu online fintech and Gen Z. Ini sudah sejak tahun lalu dikerjakan. Dan yang ketiga itu dark patterns in online behavior, which is adalah topik kita tahun ini. Dan kegiatan webinar ini adalah kegiatan yang menjadi kick off-nya. Gitu. Dan yang kedua area kami adalah psikologi media. Hmm, Intinya adalah pertama ada tiga topik juga, topik besar. Bagaimana digital media membentuk persepsi konsumen, trust konsumen, dan pengambilan keputusannya. Lalu bagaimana sosial media ataupun iklan online itu bisa berpengaruh terhadap misinformasi dan pengambilan keputusan konsumen lagi-lagi. Dan yang ketiga, ini di family level. Jadi bagaimana informasi di sosial media itu bisa berpengaruh terhadap distribusi nilai, pengembangan nilai di keluarga. Nah, untuk yang ketiga, psikologi komputasi. Saat ini juga kita sedang mengerjakan 3 topik besar, multimodal analysis dan relational well-being. Ini kebetulan bekerja sama dengan lab cognitive affect and well-being. PI-nya ada, alhamdulillah kebetulan hari ini Mbak Agnes Yanifar dari lab CAW, ya sama-sama dari Fakultas Psikologi UI juga. Dan kemudian topik kedua itu multimodalities dan dark pattern. Ini kita ambil terutama di aspek bagaimana eh, bentukan interface, jadi desain antar muka, sorry, bisa mempengaruhi bagaimana konsumen mengambil keputusan. Dan lalu kita juga coba ukur bagaimana pengalaman konsumen atau consumer experience di aspek multimodalnya, dari physiologicalnya dan dari apa ya, spasial, tekstual, dan tone-nya. Terus yang ketiga, topik yang juga masih kita mulai kerjakan itu Human Gen AI Intervention. Jadi bagaimana consumer behavior decision maupun perilakunya dipengaruhi oleh algoritma yang dikembangkan oleh AI. Demikian secara umum untuk topik riset. Nah, untuk area pengembangan pengabdian komunitas, community service, Pengmas, saat ini masih ada 2 yang kami coba kerjakan. Yang pertama, yang kanan dulu, Gensi dan online loan. Ini dikerjakan sejak tahun lalu, bentuk pengmasnya sudah mungkin bisa pernah Anda terpapar ya, ada di TikTok, kita juga pernah webinar tentang itu. Terus yang saat ini sedang kami kerjakan itu terutama itu adalah tentang saat ini negara Indonesia, Komisi 6 DPR sedang membuat revisi atas Undang-Undang Consumer Protection, pelindungan konsumen. Dan kami saat ini kita coba untuk membantu memberi masukan dari aspek perilaku ekonomi dan konsumennya. Demikian. Dan untuk yang terakhir, untuk aspek strategi rekognisi yang kita saat ini coba juga kerjakan. Nah, ini sudah kelihatan muka-mukanya para tokoh-tokoh di balik lab ini. Ada Mas Asup, ada Mbak Berti, ada Mas Hari. Mungkin yang familiar, yang beberapa di antara para yang ada di sini mungkin pasti sudah sangat kenal sama mereka semua ya. Ini TikTok kita dan kita juga lagi coba kembangkan beberapa kanal sosial media lainnya. Kemudian ya coming soon, benar-benar coming soon masih akan digodok itu rencana bukunya. Baik, ini ada beberapa contoh, beberapa lembaga yang kami melakukan riset bekerja sama dengan lembaga ini saat ini juga sedang berjalan. Kami itu dalam arti tim member ya. Oke, nah demikian sekilas tentang lab kami. Mungkin untuk menyingkat waktu, saya akan serahkan kepada Mbak Cika saja untuk mulai acaranya.
Alright. Terima kasih Mbak Rita. Thank you Mbak Rita. Good afternoon. Welcome to our webinar on online dark patterns and personality, or the exact title is Dark Patterns, Who Falls for Digital Deception Strategies. I am Laras Karasi of Chica, and I will be your moderator for today. Thank you for joining us, whether you're here live on Zoom or on YouTube or watching the recording later. We are excited to have you here for this conversation on how design tactics in digital environments can influence and exploit our psychological traits. Before we begin, a quick reminder, please use the chat function for questions if you have any questions. We also have a dedicated time for Q&A at the end, so you can choose whether you want to use the chat function or you want to open your mic at the Q&A session at the end. Both are fine. This session is being recorded and will be made available on YouTube afterward. So today's webinar is about dark patterns, those deceptive design strategies and that manipulate users into taking actions that they might not otherwise take, and how these interact with personality traits. In psychology, we often talk about personality more often in clinical settings, but today we would like to extrapolate it to a different context, which is in consumer psychology or in consumer behaviors. Our speaker today brings diverse perspectives from psychology, economics, and perhaps human computer interaction as well. Please welcome Dr. Thomas Schilling, postdoctoral researcher at the University of Trier. So I think without much further ado, I will give the floor to Thomas. Thomas, the virtual room is yours.
Thank you very much for that beautiful introduction. That was fantastic. I'm going to share my screen now and see if everything works. Let's see, where is the screen share button? Here. It's that screen. Can you all see the screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Hi. So I will, as Laras already introduced the topic. I will talk about dark patterns and personality traits, brief introductions, and then I will go over a little bit of research. A few words about me, so you know who is presenting here. So I got into psychology through an unconventional way. I first actually studied business and specialized in finance and accounting. And then I studied economics, did my PhD in economics in New Zealand at Victoria University of Wellington. And then I finally landed here in Trier in psychology, which is my hometown, actually, where I'm coming from. I worked a little bit in Luxembourg and financial institutes, lived and worked in the USA, and as I said, in New Zealand. And I really enjoy teaching, learning, and I enjoy doing research. So I'm very excited to present my work here today and the things that I teach to students as well. I love to travel, but take little time to do so. And I practice yoga and do a little bit of own body weight regularly. I listen to lots of different music genres, including singer-songwriter stuff, house goer, violin music. I like pianos. And I am a happy father of a baby girl who's 10 months old now. So that's about me. Let's start with the introduction or the overview. So I'll first introduce you a little bit into dark patterns, what these are, and why it's important to study them. Then I'll introduce you to personality traits, what this is, and why it's important to study personality traits, also in the context of economic decisions. And then I'll introduce you a little bit into heuristics and biases, because these are important for dark patterns to understand. And then I'll bridge the first three topics a little bit and link these all together. Finally, I'll show you a little bit of related research, and I'll give you a takeaway and an outlook for future research. Okay, so let's start with dark patterns. Dark patterns are based on research of choice architecture or nudging. Choice architecture is the practice of designing an environment or choice alternatives in ways that lead people to make specific decisions. You can think of choice architecture, any kind of design. A building must be designed. So somebody designs the rooms and stairs and everything in a specific way. And so people behave within that choice architecture, a building. And nudging is a form of adjusting the choice architecture so that certain choices are going to be more likely. So let's go back to the building example. If we have a building, we can set up tables and maybe, let's say we are in a cafeteria. That's actually a classical example. We can set up the cafeteria such that maybe healthier foods come first and then less healthy foods come later. And with that, we are nudging people towards first picking healthy foods. And once their plates are already full, they will be mostly eating healthy foods. That's the idea with nudging. So we are just changing certain features within the choice architecture to make people choose specific things, maybe more likely. I already provided examples. So now, what are dark patterns? These are user interface elements that guide people's behavior online. Some refer to dark patterns also as digital nudging. So we are actually designing the online environment in a way that the consumers or the users of those online platforms click on certain things with a higher likelihood. Now, research on dark patterns says that these user interface design choices benefit mostly the online service, and they try to coerce or steer and deceive users into making the decisions that this online service will benefit from, not necessarily the users of those services. So, dark patterns might therefore influence consumers against their own best interests. Now, some research has identified that dark patterns are really widespread on online shopping websites. And if you have shopped online yourself, maybe you have actually encountered dark patterns, possibly without even knowing, because that term is not very well known yet. So, but depending on the study, some say that about 11% of all platforms or online websites use dark patterns to even almost 100%. Almost all of the most commonly used websites use dark patterns. So there are 7 categories of dark patterns and 15 to 16 types. This is still evolving, and researchers are still looking into newer ways how to classify dark patterns. But I'm going to use this most recent ontology of dark patterns. So first, there's sneaking. Here, the questions are products added to shopping carts without the user's consent. Some websites, they might add things to your shopping cart, and when you are actually checking out, you see things there that you didn't really add. A classic example from a paper here, Mathur et al., is a gift card, for example. Or are maybe charges revealed only late in the shopping process? Are recurring fees charged without explicit mention of these? That's our sneaking dark pattern. An urgency dark pattern tries to make the consumer feel that buying that thing is urgent right now. This is typically done with countdown timers on websites. The misdirection dark pattern uses language that is unclear, emotionally loaded, and that has an interface. When you see websites with an interface that are just confusing and overloading, then that's probably part of the misdirection dark pattern category. Social proof uses psychological research that has shown that we people tend to follow others. We are social animals, and so social proof relies on that by showing you messages what others have done. And that more likely might lead to you doing the same thing, like choosing the same product, for example. Then there's the scarcity dark pattern or category, where these websites or apps, they show you like limited quantity messages, which tell you that maybe a product is running out soon. And therefore, if you want it, you better buy it now before somebody else buys it. Or messages that simply show that there's a high demand for specific products. The obstruction dark pattern, as the name says, tries to make things more hard, like difficult for the consumer or the user. Like it's harder to cancel a subscription than to subscribe to a service. That you probably all have experienced yourselves. And the final category is forced action, where users are simply forced to do a certain thing in order to move on in the maybe sign-up process in a purchasing process, or if they want to read something on a website, maybe you first have to sign up and enter personal information. And that's how these websites then collect information about you, and yeah. force you to do so. I would like you, the audience, now to ask if maybe some of you have seen on websites or mobile apps any of these types. If any of this sounds familiar, have you maybe recently encountered anything like this?
Yeah, some.
Yes, and can you like give an example, maybe what you've seen? Don't be shy. It's okay.
I'll be shameless here. I think one of examples that I've encountered and when doing online shopping is that there's like this where either the website or we call it like a live shopping experience in some shopping platforms in Indonesia, and the host will say that you have to immediately um, check it out and do the payment before this live shopping ends. So it's kind of like a time limit scarcity, if I say. And sometimes, you know, when you check it out, your shopping what do you call it, like your shopping cart would automatically add kind of like the insurance or something, and you have to manually uncheck it.
Yes.
Otherwise you will get charged more for those extra services.
Thank
And
you. Very good
here,
example. I will
yeah,
now
and
show you a few examples that the lab has collected for me. Thank you, lab, from Indonesia. So here's one where, like Laras just mentioned, here this is an insurance which is by default pre-selected. So when you don't pay attention, you will buy insurance that you may not need or want. Or here you also see these crossed out numbers. This relies on anchoring, the anchoring heuristic. I'll talk about this briefly soon, but this just suggests that there is a good deal here. You are actually maybe saving money because this is right now reduced, apparently. Other examples, here you have forced enrollment. Like I previously said, you have to sign up so that you can use a specific service or watch something or do something on a website. You must sign up. And then in the sign up process, they will collect lots of personal information about you. False hierarchy is this in the middle here that tries to suggest that an option and like one choice is better than the other. I don't know what the buttons here say, but here it's like the blue button, it's highlighted. So this suggests, it draws our attention to this button. And with a design like that, if people don't pay careful attention, then they might just click on the button because they have been drawn to it like, kind of automatically. You can think of it like a fly or a mosquito flying towards the light. It's a saliency effect here. And confirm shaming is another dark pattern you might have encountered maybe somewhere where they have these specific texts on buttons that sound like if you don't accept this, you are being maybe a dull person, maybe a boring or a stupid person or whatever. You're making a bad choice. So they try to shame you into actually, yes, I have to say yes now because I don't want to say that I'm dumb. So the final example that I have, I think, is the scarcity bias. And here you have lots of different things actually happening at the same time. But one is this countdown timer that you see maybe here. Maybe do I need to select the pointer? I don't know. Do you see my mouse actually moving?
Yes.
I do. Yes, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Your pointer is moving.
Okay, cool. So my mouse cursor is here. So you see there's actually a timer running down, which is trying to give you a sense of urgency. If you don't buy now, the deal might be gone soon. But they also use other things like I said before. Here you have a discount, large discounts, trying to play with the anchoring heuristic. Lots of these examples. You will find those on many different websites and apps. all over the world. It's not just in Indonesia, of course. And because of that, regulators have taken this potential for harm seriously. And so for example, in the EU, we have different legislations like the Digital Services Act, the Digital Markets Act, and the Data Act proposal, which all discuss dark patterns in some way and prohibit them. The US law in the California Privacy Act, Rights Act, and the California Consumer Privacy Act has discussed dark patterns, the term specifically. Even Indian regulations, the Central Consumer Protection Authority has discussed these dark patterns and wants to legislate those, prohibit them in ways. And because some of these regulations are already in force, companies already have been punished for the use of dark patterns. And these fines, they were a few $1,000s. And in one case, I've seen it was over $400 million already. So companies need to pay attention to this. Now, why might consumers want to look closer at dark patterns? First, you might be victim of in the internet deception that leads you to financial damage or psychological damage, because you might feel ashamed that you have fallen for these tricks. Like previously, maybe when it was still okay and legal to call random numbers and try to sell you something over the phone, people felt ashamed that they actually bought something over the phone. Now they might feel ashamed that they have fallen victim to deceptive patterns, these here. Of course, you will lose time when you are trying to fight these things. If you bought something that you didn't actually want to buy, then, well, that can be a lengthy process. And of course, one of the biggest concerns so far was that these deceptive designs exploit or collect private information of people, which then also could be used. And I will discuss that a little bit later. Well, these deceptive practices, they may have an influence on the entire online marketplace, of course. It's not just that maybe a company's reputation is at risk, but if everybody uses these, then maybe the internet is not going to be a safe place for consumers anymore. And that could be a problem, especially since online shopping is becoming such a big thing now, and the share of the whole retail market is really taking over e-commerce. And the Boston Consulting Group, for example, estimates that by 2027, the share of online retail market will be somewhere between 23 and 41%. And it's currently at about $7 billion, I think. So it's a massive market, and it's growing fast. And we as researchers, of course, we will look at dark patterns because this research is partially still scarce. We need to understand it better. We need to understand what it actually does. Which of these dark patterns are most harmful, so that legislators know on what of these dark patterns to focus on and how to legislate them. There are, of course, marketing techniques that might be fine and legal. Marketing has been around always, since, I don't know, for like maybe 150 or more years. And a lot of these dark patterns, they rely on the same things that marketing has been using for a very long time. And we as researchers, of course, are also interested in psychological mechanisms, and that is more specifically what I'll be talking about also. The psychological mechanism that is maybe activated when you see specific messages. So let me introduce you a little bit to heuristics and biases. This is important partially because dark patterns exploit these heuristics and biases. If you want to watch more a little video, there's something on YouTube available. I'm gonna just introduce you here briefly my way. So heuristics are rules of thumb or mental shortcuts that help us in making decisions more quickly and solve problems faster. Rules of thumb like, well, if it's very windy, the weather might change. That is maybe a rule of thumb. That's like what I learned from experience. Or if I see clouds outside and they are very dark, I might take an umbrella with me. I learned this from experience, so I'm just taking it maybe in case. Or other rules of thumb, if you see a snake, maybe don't go close to it because it might be dangerous. We don't know, so better stay far away. But there's rules of thumb that use these psychological mechanisms. Like I said before, these categories like scarcity. If something seems to be very rare, scarce, then we people tend to value it more, and we feel like we should buy it now because it might be gone soon. So it's these things that dark patterns actually exploit. And these heuristics, they can be triggered by situational stimuli. A situational stimuli can be anything that you see within a choice architecture, or say on a platform, any sort of nudging techniques. Nudging also exploits or employs these heuristics and biases. And these heuristics and biases, they can be beneficial in some contexts and harmful in others. And dark pattern researchers argue that these are mostly harmful when employed online. Yeah, and well, as I guess you said before, research has revealed what type of contextual stimuli reliably leads people to make harmful choices, and when it does so that it results in so-called biased decisions and choices that may not be optimal from a normative perspective. So there's 4 types of heuristics. One is availability heuristic. Here we have the mental shortcut where we make an inference about a frequency or probability judgment based on how easy it is to bring something in mind, to think about an example of that case that we're trying to judge. The availability heuristic occurs because certain memories come to mind more easily than others. Does one here maybe have an idea of an example? If you read this sentence again, maybe you can come up with an example. I'll give you one example. Maybe then it's easier for you with the next one. For example, assume you've watched a news report about a recent airplane crash. And lots of people died and it was really dramatic. And you had booked a flight for vacation somewhere. And now suddenly you might feel uneasy about going flying because you have that memory on mind of that airplane crash. And now you're judging the probability or frequency of an airplane crash as much higher. That's relying on the availability heuristic. Plane crashes are very rare, and these vivid, dramatic experiences or moments that we hear about make this memory very salient on our minds, and that makes us think about these occurrences and as judging them as much higher in frequency and probability. Another heuristic is the representativeness heuristic. So people tend to classify events into categories, which then can result in our use of the representative heuristic. We think in like stereotypes and categories. When we see something, we tend to automatically judge this within a category. And so when we use this heuristic, we categorize these events or objects based on how they relate to similar instances. that we are familiar with. So from experience, we all build our own categories in our mind. And then we use these to make predictions about new situations. And we think in cause-outcome relationships. And so when we now have a category in mind and we see something new that fits that category, we tend to think of that new thing, give it some certain similar characteristics based on the category that we have known from before, because we learned about a specific category. A stereotype is one such category. Maybe you can give me an example of a stereotype. Maybe you have a stereotypical category and you think these characteristics apply to that stereotype. And if those characteristics, if you see those characteristics somewhere else, then you automatically apply that category to that other person or object. Does someone here maybe have an idea of an example?
For representativeness heuristics, is there any mic open? I saw some
Representativeness heuristic. Yes, I think there's a mic.
People are grumpy. So from readers, old people are grumpy.
Old people are grumpy. Very good. Yes. Yep. So now you could think if you hear a grumpy person, you might directly think, oh, this is an old person, probably. That could be the representativeness heuristic applied. Okay, so there's two more heuristics. I'll just explain them briefly and then I'll move on to the next topic. So the anchoring and adjustment heuristic, you've seen this before in those examples of dark patterns. When we see a certain value, like a number somewhere, we tend to anchor on that initial value, on this number, and then we adjust, often insufficiently, from this number. We even are sometimes anchoring on numbers in a specific context that have nothing to do with our choices within this context. This can happen, and this then biases our decisions and our perceptions of things. And the last heuristic is the affect heuristic, which says that we often make decisions and judgments based on how we feel in the situation. We don't actually think about the context so much, and the information presented is not all rational, but it's more emotional. And we use these emotions to make a decision, a judgment about a choice or a decision. And all of these heuristics, they can be employed and are used by dark patterns. Now I'm going to introduce you a little bit to personality research. I talk about, maybe you know about Big 5 personality traits. I'll talk about a different framework. So what are personality traits actually? One definition from the APA dictionary is personality traits are relatively stable, consistent, and enduring internal characteristics that are inferred from patterns of behaviors. So how we behave, what we do, how we think about something, how we feel about something, how we perceive things. The study of personality traits can be useful in summarizing and predicting behaviors and also in explaining individuals' behaviors and choices. And I was told before, at your university in Indonesia, you are thinking of personality mostly in the context of clinical psychology, but there is a lot of research that shows that personality traits influence economic decisions too. So I'm talking about Hexaco plus D personality traits. This is a rather new framework of personality. So I'll introduce each trait with one sentence. Honesty, humility, the H in Hexaco, is a tendency to be fair and genuine in dealing with others, in the sense of cooperating with others, even when one might exploit me without suffering any retaliation. So I'm not actually trying to retaliate. I'll just endure maybe this suffering. I'm just trying to be fair and genuine and kind and doing the right thing. It has a lot to do with ethics and morality. The opposite of this is then, of course, that some people who are low on honesty and humility, they will be more exploitative. They will be less cooperating. Emotionality is very related to neuroticism in the Big Five framework, which measures the tendencies to be altruistic, to be empathic towards others, but also to just feel emotions maybe stronger, to be more anxious, to be more afraid, but also maybe even to be more excited about things. Extroversion is specifically about engagement in social endeavors. It's about socializing with people. If we want to lead people and show people things, if we want to be entertainers, then those are more extroverted persons. Agreeableness versus anger. Measures the tendency to be forgiving and tolerant of others. It's very strongly related to honesty, humility. It's also in the sense of cooperating with others. But agreeableness measures this a little bit more in others with more in terms of how you deal with kin, with related others, and honest humility is more about how you deal a little bit more about with strangers, not maybe kin and related people. Conscientiousness as engagement in task-related behaviors, how well you think about the future, how hardworking you are, whether you're planning things in advance, and how organized you are. Then you are highly conscientious, or maybe not. And finally, openness to experiences from the Hexaco framework measures how open you are to experiences, whether you like learning, whether you are creative, imaginative, whether you like to think thoroughly about things, whether you are actually enjoying to use your brain a lot or not, maybe. And it's also related to artistic behaviors and interests. And finally, there's this disintegration psychoticism trait, which is still very new and it's being developed. I'm not sure if this is like researchers are still debating if this should be actually measured as a trait itself. And this stems from information from distorted information processes within us. All people create reality in their own way, and some people create reality in a very specific way that maybe is a bit distorted from how others see reality, how they perceive things, how they feel about things. And so that is captured within disintegration, or also some refer to it as psychoticism. Now I'll skip this. Lots of different adjectives that describe these traits. And these adjectives give you a little bit more background and understanding what's actually captured and measured within those traits. Now, how do we measure these traits? Very simple, actually, with these survey instruments, Likert scales. We ask participants to self-report how strongly they agree to a statement. And if they strongly agree here in this example, for example, this is for emotionality. I am afraid of feeling pain, then 7 would indicate that they are high on emotionality. They score high on emotionality. And if they score high on all of these items, then they might be like very emotional people. So we use items like this, statements, where people simply agree or disagree with these statements. And that's how we infer personality traits. So far. So why might it be important to study personality? As I said, personality predicts real-life choices and outcomes. It's not just relevant for the clinical setting. It predicts criminal behaviors. It predicts the likelihood of experiencing various diseases, academic and professional achievement. It even predicts how happy you are with your life in general. It predicts consumer behavior, like shopping decisions. and financial decisions, including savings and borrowing decisions, investment decisions, indebtedness, and insurance choices. So there's lots of research that shows that personality traits matter to our lives overall in general. For me, most relevant, because I study economic psychology, I look at these literatures at the bottom: consumer behavior and financial decision making. This is my main research topic. Now, with personality, we know that people are able to express personalities within a situation to different degrees. If a situation does not allow you to express your personality because that situation simply requires you to be different, then you will not be able to express your personality. You will not be who you actually are. Now, let me tell you again here. These three traits specifically, honest humility, agreeableness, and emotionality, are interpreted as traits that involve active engagement and pro-social, cooperative, or anti-social behaviors. Extroversion, conscientiousness, and openness are interpreted as traits that involve active task-related engagement, like in social and environments and efforts-related domains of behavior and anything that's idea-related. So we know that context matters to personality. We can only express our personality if the context allows this. And certain contexts simply require us to be a specific type. For example, in school settings, you are sitting there and you have to be quiet. Even if you are a very extroverted person and you want to be talkative and you want to do things and move in the school setting, you should be sitting and listening to the lecturer. That's one simple environment that simply does not allow people to express their personality traits. Now, we know that personality traits therefore also predict behavior best in relevant situations. So if you are in a situation that allows you to express your personality specifically, like at a party and you're an extroverted person, then you can be very extroverted because you're at a party. But if you're in a situation where you cannot actually express your personality, then that situation is not relevant to this specific trait, and therefore you will not express that trait. So there's an interaction between situation and personality. So I'm building up to my research now. This interaction matters for dark patterns as well, because we can design situations in a way that we engage certain people, activate states or traits in people to a larger or lesser extent. Before I move on to my research, there is research that shows that biases that I talked about before can be classified in 3 different types of biases. And these 3 different types of biases, simplification biases, verification biases, and regulation biases, can be mapped onto personality traits and onto dark patterns. So that's how now I'm going to bridge the whole thing. Now, how I want to show you or tell you that personality traits, specific personality traits, are more likely to use specific heuristics and fall for specific biases. That's what this paper actually here, Ulrich and Bayazet, argues. If a person is more likely to use a specific heuristic or fall for a specific bias, then it might be possible to target that person, that personality trait, with specific messages that will activate this bias. So the authors say that individual differences like personality traits in core self-evaluations, in approach or avoidance temperament, and in cognitive ability and style help explain how biases actually come about and why some people are more likely than others to exhibit specific biases. Now, let me repeat again here. Some researchers propose that certain traits influence how likely and how strongly we express certain behaviors. That's specific, just personality research. And personality traits are relatively stable patterns of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors within individuals that reflect the tendency to respond in certain ways under certain circumstances. So it's really the circumstances that also matter. Now I mapped personality traits onto some of these biases in the model, the Oreg and Biasit model. That's the model actually that they showed. And they say cognitive style, for example, is one trait. And cognitive style is, for example, reflected in things like openness to experiences or in disintegration, other things as well, like need for cognition. Or simplification biases are examples are the availability heuristic, representativeness heuristic that I showed before. So I now can relate specific traits to specific biases, and these specific biases are employed or used by specific dark patterns. And therefore, specific traits are, in my opinion, probably more likely to fall for these biases, as classified here. Avoidance approach and temperament, for example, is related to extroversion, to neuroticism, how impulsive we are, how anxious we are. And biases that exploit this temperament, this our anxiety and such, are, for example, framing effects, endowment effects. I'll skip this too. Now I'm mapping personality traits to these biases and to dark patterns. So I've showed you those categories of dark patterns before. Sneaking, for example, has a hidden costs deceptive design. And this hidden cost deceptive design tries to exploit sunk cost fallacy. So I'm in the second row here. And the sunk cost fallacy, I hypothesize that people who are more agreeable and who are highly conscientious, they might be differently susceptible to the sunk cost fallacy than people who are maybe less agreeable and less conscientious. That's just what I'm trying to say here, that these traits are probably related to these biases, and these biases are related to these dark patterns, like hidden subscription attention biases. Confirm shaming has a framing effect, and so on. So there's very little research. And when I created this presentation, there was no research that actually showed that personality traits interact with these dark patterns. So this is my research now, a little bit of it. First, the first paper that I've ever read about this was this one by Abbott et al. And they say they have the title, the paper, The Role of Dark Pattern Stimuli and Personality in Predicting Online Impulse Shopping Behavior. Their question was whether personality influences the effectiveness of dark patterns in online impulse shopping. And they wanted to know whether specific personalities are more susceptible to certain dark patterns. Let me jump to the results. The findings suggest that personality traits actually impact susceptibility to dark patterns from this research. They showed that extroversion was the most predictive trait for social proof. Now think about it. So extroversion has something to do with social interactions. So if I see a social proof message online, social proof again is, for example, something like a lot of people are looking at this right now, and there's high demand in this. That's social proof. Then maybe more extroverted people are going to pay more attention to this specific message. And they showed that conscientiousness was a key predictor in high demand scenarios as well. They found no effects for neuroticism. Now here's one of my papers. I also studied whether people are more susceptible to dark patterns. Some people are more susceptible than others. Can personality traits predict susceptibility? So are you more prone or less prone to these dark patterns? And I'm also going to jump to the results. The findings here suggest that different personality traits actually predict or impact susceptibility to dark patterns. So I've shown or found that, for example, emotionality and disintegration increased general DP susceptibility, dark pattern susceptibility. So in general, people were more likely to buy something or had reported a higher intention to buy things if they saw a dark pattern and if their personality trait was higher on emotionality and disintegration. That's what it means. So we are actually showing that people really do react differently to dark patterns depending on their personality type. And for example, high honesty, humility, and agreeableness increase susceptibility to pre-selection biases. So if insurance is pre-selected, for example, these people were more likely to just go with it and keep the pre-selection. And in this research, conscientiousness also increased susceptibility to quantity scarcity, like a limited quantity, only 5 things left. Buy now or it's gone. Conscientious people were more likely to say, okay, I'm going to buy it. And finally, another paper. Again, we studied whether personality can predict susceptibility. We only looked here at specifically at scarcity, 3 different types of scarcity. One is limited quantity, one is like a high demand message, and one is like a countdown timer. And let me jump to the results again at the bottom. Here we found that actually overall these different scarcity types had no influence on average. So really employing those to everybody might actually lead to no results, nothing. And there's lots of research accumulating that these messages are actually not effective anymore. But the problem now is it is effective for some people. And I, in this research, found that low honesty, humility, high disintegration, and high agreeableness increased susceptibility specifically to supply-based scarcity, but to no other scarcity-based dark patterns. So, what can we take away from this? Dark patterns are common and they can be powerful. They intentionally are designed to exploit cognitive biases in people by steering towards decisions that we might not otherwise make. These exploit heuristics and biases, things that we really have no control over. We employ these heuristics and have these biases. And lots of research has shown that even being aware of these things and knowing about them does not lead us to use them less often. So we are simply mechanistically, automatically using these biases. And if now something exploits those biases, that can be a problem. I have hopefully shown you or told you that personality matters. Personality traits, especially conscientiousness, agreeableness, emotionality, and disintegration, in my research, moderated the impact of dark patterns. So not all users are equally susceptible. And also, content or context shapes this susceptibility. So the way we are presenting specific things will influence specific people differently. And at least from my research, I can say that there seems to be no one-size-fits-all intervention. Not each dark pattern will influence everybody to the same extent. Psychological targeting with personality traits can therefore be used to make these dark patterns more effective. Now, if companies start to use personality traits to target specific consumers, that could be a big problem. And there is research, and I thought I had it on my slides, there is research that also shows that personality traits can be inferred from online behavior. So whether you click on certain things on Facebook and what you like and what you don't like actually tells something about your personality. There is research that showed that we can look at Twitter accounts, and from the Twitter messages, we can infer personality traits. We can infer personality traits from financial transactions. So research is accumulating that shows that personality traits can be estimated and inferred. And if a company now collects data about you as a consumer, and they collect your behavior online and start to use this collected information to estimate your personality trait, to target you specifically with specific dark patterns, to make their selling more effective, that could now be maybe personal intrusion. So, what's the conclusion? My opinion. Well, dark patterns are annoying, but not just annoying. They are psychologically manipulative. They are unethical and often harmful. Understanding why dark patterns work requires a behavioral science lens. We need to merge cognitive psychology with behavioral economics and personality psychology to understand dark patterns better. Because there is some evidence that dark patterns or that personality traits predict dark patterns for vulnerability. Therefore, I suggest future research should explore these dark patterns more carefully and understand the psychological mechanisms and understand maybe what personality traits or other characteristics predicts susceptibility to dark patterns. And also, we need regulatory frameworks that incorporate this psychological vulnerability. If these regulatory frameworks cannot simply ban all dark patterns at once, we need to be more specific, more clear. And this should be done hopefully through science-informed design and policy making. Thanks very much for your attention. I'm sorry it took a little bit longer, but yeah. Any questions? Any comments? Maybe.
All right. Thank you, Tomek. Any questions from the audience? I have one question here through in the chat, I think through direct message. So shall I read the question first, or shall we wait for the audience to? So after there are two questions. So I think I would read the questions from the chat box. The first one comes from Asup. Thanks for the explanation, Tomek. Based on the explanation on the hexaco personality, can we conclude that individuals with low honesty, humility, personality trait would be more susceptible to dark patterns, since we assume that they might be less thorough and less careful in checking information and terms in when doing transactions?
Wait, honesty, humility does not measure how well they check things and how thorough they are. I think that the trait this person is actually referring to is conscientiousness.
Or conscientiousness. Does it mean that individuals with stronger conscientiousness is more susceptible to certain dark patterns?
This is a good question, and that's the right thinking. That's what I thought as well. So when people don't deliberate so much, they don't think so carefully about something, they might be more susceptible to dark patterns, right? Low conscientiousness also is related to more impulsive behavior. So yes, that's exactly the psychological mechanism that I'm thinking about when measuring personality traits. Correct thinking. So far, the research shows that actually it's the opposite. More conscientious persons are actually more likely to follow for specific dark patterns. This mechanism, this should be maybe explored a little bit more. Could be that maybe because they are conscientious and they want to make the right decision, a message like that could actually mean to them, okay, that I don't want to be the one who has maybe done a mistake. So I'm going to buy now. I'm going to do this now because I plan ahead. I'm thinking ahead. Okay, now if this is gone soon, then I need to do this now. That could be the mechanism, but that's how we are trying to think about these dark patterns and the psychological mechanisms that are exploited. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Any follow up? Any probe?
Yeah, it's enough. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. And then the next question comes from Mario. I assume that there are individual and communal personality traits. Does communal personality trait change over time, or is it more permanent? Does it have any impacts for dark patterns? So Yeah, so the question is about individual versus communal personality traits. I was wondering if.
Um, I'm not sure what this person referred to by communal traits. So I can only now maybe the person can explain maybe, but maybe they can send a message. But I'll try to interpret this. So some people researchers try to study whether personality traits are different in groups. So we might be expressing different personality traits, and then groups have their own personalities. That could be a communal personality trait. So I think the question then is whether uh, these communal traits are differently susceptible than individual traits. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes, and that's the first part, and the second part, whether it's whether it changes over time or whether it's personality, communal or individual stays permanent.
Oh, okay. So one thing I'm not sure if a group would be differently susceptible to a dark pattern. Probably yes, because the group can talk about it. Yeah, the group they can actually interact and they can influence each other and they can think about this in maybe different ways. So a group will probably be differently influenced. But I think dark patterns, they are like very individualized things. When we shop online, we usually don't shop with other people together. We don't actually look at the products together, look at the websites together. So I think dark patterns are very much targeting individuals, not groups.
I think he mentioned here whether there's any evidence on. I think here he clarifies it. What he means by communal personality, it's more like region related characteristics. So, for example, we know that New Yorkers are different from Californians. So, do you find any evidence on that in the literature or in your own research?
That's a cool, interesting question. I have not studied this myself, and I've not also not encountered any research that has actually done this. I know that there's some research that shows that different cultures, different countries have different personalities. But this is, I think, still like quite rare research. It's not a lot of this available, and I have not heard of any research whether they have shown that specific, specific cities or communities in a country have different personalities. That would be really interesting. I think the other question was whether this actually changes. And like I said before, personality, absolutely. We can express personality differently depending on the situation that we are in. So when we are with other people who have a specific personality, we will express our personality to a different degree. So yeah, there might be people who we click with, and then we are suddenly very extroverted. Or there might be people who have views that we just don't agree with, and then if we are a low agreeable person, like not agreeable, then we might start to argue with this person, and maybe then we express our personality within the situation. Given the situation, we just express our personalities differently. But that's also research that says this is personality states. States are like short-term expressions of our personality traits.
So does it answer the question, Mario? I think yes. So he yeah. So I think it does. So another insight is that we can conceptualize personality as trait and state. That's correct. All right. So that's something insightful. A question from Mas Hari Susianto. Tomek, in your studies, did you control participants' experience or perceived their perceived experience in online shopping? I suspect, Mas Hari suspect that more experienced consumers can spot and therefore can resist the tricks of these dark pattern strategies? What's your take on that?
That's a good question that I tried to capture in one of my studies. So I actually asked participants if they are aware of deceptive designs, and I gave them different responses, like the different categories, so that I could rate them from not aware at all to very aware, and they actually know this. And I tried to find out if these people are maybe less susceptible to dark patterns. And in my research, at least, I found out that it has no influence. Whether you are aware of this or not has no influence on whether you are actually relying on dark patterns.
All right.
But I think this is a research question that should be explored much more, much better, because that question would then answer if educating people about dark patterns actually helps us or not, if this actually makes sense. My hunch is that it might have very little impact, because the nudging literature, which is many more years older and is much bigger, the nudging and heuristics and biases literature has actually shown repeatedly that when people know about these heuristics and biases, when they understand them, they still employ them. They still fall for the tricks. Awareness of these things does not seem to protect from these biases.
So here, experience does not protect us from. Well, we
Maybe
might be able to identify it, but it doesn't mean that we can resist it.
Maybe not. Yes, exactly. But also, I maybe I need to say here as well that it seems that some of these tactics, they are actually becoming less effective. Why? Probably because they're used on so many different websites. There's the saturation. We just don't think that these messages are real anymore. Maybe it's not because we understand them or that we have heard about them, but more that, well, everybody uses those messages. Therefore, this cannot be true. Especially online, it's probably all fake, because well, why would they have only 5 items left on that? May seem very suspicious.
Right. So I think at some point the consumers are able to identify, to recognize and resist it if kind of like a strategy being overused across different platforms or websites. A question. So we have a lot of questions actually, which is a good problem to have.
Cool.
A question from Pak Arif Indarmawan. Hi, Tomek. From your perspective, what are the key distinctions between dark patterns and online fraud, particularly regarding the intent behind the design and how they influence users' decision making? Can dark patterns sometimes act as a gateway to fraud?
Yeah, I think this is a very important question that some researchers are really discussing, debating thoroughly, especially legal researchers, because these legal frameworks are not very clear on what is actually a dark pattern and when is it fraudulent, when is it really deceptive, and when is it not. Like I said before, we had these things employed in supermarkets and everywhere, and online as well for many decades. And it's not so clear when is this dark pattern actually fraudulent, but I would say yes, dark patterns do lead to fraud. Sometimes it is fraudulent when you tell me, for example, that an item is only left, like three items are only left, but you actually have 5,000 of them, then that's lying to me, right? It's just problematic that on websites we cannot really see, and we cannot really know if there are only 5 or 3 items left. And then it's absolutely manipulative and fraudulent.
Right. So I think this is kind of like slippery slope when we talk about the legal aspect of it, because for example, when we said like there's only 5 items left. Oh, there's only 5 items left in front of me, but in the warehouse we don't know like how many thousands. So what counts as fraud, I think would be tricky here. Another question here from Pak Arlianto. The interesting thing is when someone like my wife, has experienced disappointment, such as buying items online, and then when she receives it, the stuff did not match her expectations, so she's disappointed. However, on the next day, she still purchased items online, maybe due to the influence of dark patterns. Do you think that the decision to keep buying things online despite the disappointment is also related to the person's personality, or if there are any other factors that affect it?
This is a funny question, Arianto. Yes, I think so. I think that your personality will definitely also influence whether you are going to shop online despite disappointment. I have not thought about this question deeply, and so unfortunately I can't give you a very good answer what personality trait probably has to do with this. But there is research that shows that specific personality traits are also associated with going shopping online versus going shopping offline in brick and mortar stores. So if personality traits predict if you are going shopping online, then I also think that personality traits will predict whether you go shopping online repeatedly despite disappointment. You might just disregard that you were disappointed. You just want to go shopping. Maybe that's it.
All right. The next question from Ibu Adis. Thank you, Tomek, for your insightful presentation. In your opinion, what criteria can help us differentiate genuinely effective user interface design versus designs that crossing the line of manipulative dark patterns?
Good question, Alice. I think that's very related to the question before. When is a dark pattern fraudulent and when is it not? And I'm not a legal scholar. I don't study so much. When is a dark pattern fraudulent? When is it actually deceptive? How do we classify specific types of dark patterns? That is research that I am not very familiar with, unfortunately. But from my opinion, I would differentiate between a genuinely effective user interface design simply when it doesn't lie. When you don't try to say something that it's not true, then it's a design that maybe is not necessarily fraudulent. But of course, there could be then still designs that force you to do certain things just so that the company collects information from you. Now, it's hard. I think there's no clear definition yet on when is a company actually doing something fraudulent. This needs to be explained and defined in regulations better.
All right. Can I have one more question, please? Organizing committee, please. Yes. All right.
Last question, but go ahead.
Okay. One last question. Okay, from Pak Daniel. I assume that the manipulators or those marketers who use dark patterns were more conscious about the attention to the details, impulsiveness, patience, or greediness or greed of the customers than they were to the customers' personalities, because probably we don't have, as marketers, it's not, they don't always have information about the customer's personality. So what do you think about it?
I would say that a lot of these things that Danielle mentioned here is actually personality. The conscious, like the attention to detail, that measures conscientiousness in some way. It's a facet of conscientiousness. Impulsiveness is low conscientiousness or high emotionality. Patience has to do with conscientiousness. So if companies actually measure these things, they are really measuring facets of personality traits. If they know this information somehow, then they also can infer personality traits. At least from what Daniel mentioned here, I would say they could probably infer something about their conscientiousness.
All right. So I think it's like they might not use the formal terms of it, like the variable terms that we use as researchers. However, the kind of like the concept is, you know, they have some assumption or speculation perhaps that they which lead them to embed some kind of like strategies or marketing tricks that, you know, can lure the consumers to do some kind of like either impulsive buying or compulsive buying or and whatnot. All right. So that was our last question. That brings us to the end of today's session on the online dark patterns and personality. I would like to give a huge thank you to Thomas Schilling, to Tomek, and to all of you who are participating. So the recording will be available on YouTube. And if you found this session valuable, please consider sharing it with your colleagues or your students. And from us, I would say stay safe, stay informed, stay critical and conscious of those online design choices. Perhaps thank you again for all joining us. So for now, take care and goodbye. Have a
Thank you very much for being
great
here.
remaining of your day. Thank you.
Thank you for organizing this today.
Lastly, I'm sorry, let's take a photo together before we end.
Oh, all right. So yeah, so if you could open the camera so that we can have like this virtual photo,
That's a cool
virtual
idea.
group picture. All right. All right. How many? So the organizing committee, please. The comment is from your end.
Yeah, while waiting for everyone to turn on their camera, we already put an evaluation link in the chat. So if everyone would kindly fill the link. We also have a participation certificate available. If by filling the link, we will use certificate. So,
Right.
We will wait for about another 1 minute, maybe, if someone needs to tidy their hair or for the photo
Do
session.
lipstick touch up.
Yeah, please. As a reminder, also please fill the evaluation so we can deliver better webinars for next sessions. Okay.
All right.
Please.
Shall we take the picture now? All right. Okay. All right.
Aurelia will be screenshotting and I will be counting. Okay. Please smile in 3, 2, 1. Again, 1, 2, 3. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming.
Bye-bye.
Bye.